Hey folks, Dr. Mike here with Renaissance Periodization. Let's talk about why unstable training doesn't really work, especially for strength and size purposes, which I assume many of you are here to try to learn about. So, unstable training, what do we call unstable? Well, in reality, there's a spectrum of stability and instability on which all training modalities in the gym lie. The most stable kind of training occurs on a fixed machine, like a selectorized chest press. All the handles only move in a certain direction, and it's so stable because it generates its own internal friction that you don't even get the full eccentric load because the friction actually takes that away. So it's even more stable than a regular weight, and thus machines get the most stability. Second most stable is the Smith machine. Smith machine is much more stable than a barbell, allows you to feel most eccentric forces, but still has some friction and still has a certain line of push or pull that you can't deviate from. So it's more stable than a barbell. Barbell moves are the next most stable, pretty stable if you're quite adept at them. After that are body weight moves, often similar to barbell moves, but the way in which they're executed is usually a bit more unstable. For example, push-ups are just as stable as a bench, even sometimes more stable, but dips, are a bit less stable than something like a decline barbell press. So it's kind of up in the air. Body weight and barbell are usually pretty similar. After that, in most cases, you have cables, significantly less stable, but nonetheless pretty stable. Then you have dumbbells, which tend to be actually quite unstable, but if you're well practiced at them, the loads are relatively lighter and you're doing normal movements, not, where both of your feet are on the ground, your back's on a bench, it can be pretty stable. After that, you have an inherently unstable move, usually with dumbbells. For example, dumbbell lunges. They're still good, quality, effective moves, but it requires quite a bit of balance to get done properly. And then after that, you have a big chasm of instability, which we don't have anything in. And then towards the end of the spectrum of very unstable are the intentionally unstable moves. And for example, they are Bosu balls, doing crunches or squatting off a Bosu ball. They can be single leg or arm training that's intentionally balanced focused. So for example, you have one dumbbell locked out in a press, and you're pressing the other dumbbell while this one is just there. And when you get tired, you do the other. So probably one of the stupidest ways you can train. Football players do it all the time for some reason. Then, of course, you have things like the balance board, which is really tough to use. And all of those, et cetera, down the line. Balance modalities are super unstable, and they're trying to apparently actively get you to be off balance. So why is stability a good thing? Why do we want it? What do we know about stability? Well, the faster fibers, the fastest fast twitch fibers you have, they generate lots of force when they contract, and we want them to do that because they tend to be the most strength enhancement prone and most growth enhancement prone. So if you train hard and you train your fastest fibers, they usually grow the most. So we want to have them generate lots of force. And we want that force generation to happen in a relatively safe manner, because if they're generating lots of force, but they become unstable during that time, you can get quite hurt. Stability really reduces injury risk, so we want to generate very high forces in order to have our fastest fibers be super active, and we want to do it in a safe manner. Now, that's generally a huge argument for being ultra stable, but is there a thing such as too stable? Maybe. So there's this process where you use machines, Smith machines as well, but usually normal machines, where, and I'll make a separate video about this later to get into the intricacies, I'll just introduce you to this concept really quick. If you have a high friction machine, like all machines are different as far as friction, the worst ones probably have the highest friction. On the concentric with high friction, it doesn't matter because you're pushing against the friction plus the load and your muscles are contracting very well. But check this out. If you push 100 pounds against friction, and the friction is, let's say, 50 pounds, well, let's not exaggerate. Let's say 20 pounds of friction. The concentric is 120 pounds of force on the way up. Okay, fine. What about on the way back down? The selectorized stack is still 100, but the friction's 20. And the friction works both directions because the friction works backwards too. So now you're exposing the eccentric to 80 pounds of force as opposed to 120. Now you wanted 100. If it was a free weight, it would be 100 on the concentric, 100 on the eccentric. If it was a Smith machine, it would be 105 on the concentric, 95 on the eccentric. No big deal. Still getting sore, everything's really good. But if you have a machine that has a lot of internal friction, then you essentially bias, it's 120 on the concentric, for example, 80 on the eccentric, you're biasing the movement to be concentric focused, eccentric unfocused. To be completely honest, a very sort of open-minded reading of the strength training and resistance training literature for hypertrophy and strength shows that if anything, if we have this magical ability, we should make machines that bias towards the eccentric, like 120, concentric 80. The other way around, the eccentric is probably a little bit more hypertrophic than the concentric. But machines that generate a lot of friction actually push this back the other way. Now, here's the thing. High friction machines are very, very stable. But because the fact that they de-emphasize the eccentric, especially that deep stretch with the highest forces, is now gone because it's 80 pounds, not 120, what ends up happening is they're probably not as hypertrophic. So there is a sense in which too much stability, when it's at the expense of the friction, is not ideal, right? So selectorized machines with lots of eccentric reducing friction are maybe too stable, and that's not great. Now, generally, machines are very good, awesome stability. You can get your faster fibers going. Smith machines are excellent. Barbells are incredible. Dumbbell moves are good, dumbbells and body weight, but with the following caveat, especially dumbbell moves and some cable moves, they're great. But if you try to use very low reps, that's a 5 to 10, the instability is so high that the faster fibers don't even turn on much, and thus they don't get a lot of hypertrophy. However, it's if lighter weight, sets of 10 to 20, then you do get the fiber activation because the instability never really gets out of hand. So the humble recommendation here is, yes, use machines, preferably the ones with the lowest friction. Use Smith machines, use barbells for sure for size and strength. Definitely use dumbbells and cables, but the recommendation here is to use them mostly in the 10 to 20 or 10 to 30 rep range, or 20 to 30, and not as much in the 5 to 10 rep range unless your stimulus to fatigue ratio there is just amazing, right? Now, what about instability? The upside of stability is it allows our faster fibers to activate and it keeps us safe so we get really great training. What about instability? What's the deal there? Well, it does. People will say, oh, instability is good because you use your stabilizers more. And that's true. Unstable exercises do involve muscles that are not directly involved with the movement more. The problem is they work in dynamic synergist roles in which they fire like a stabilizer. So basically, if in a squat on a Bosu ball, your quads are the main rocket boosters taking you up, then little tiny parts of your glutes on the side and your abs and even muscles in your back end up firing like when you have to turn the space shuttle to dock with the International Space Station. Docking? If you don't know what I'm talking about, cool. If you do, you need to get on the internet less. So the space shuttle is trying to dock with the International Space Station. It's got those little puff vector thrust things. That's how those muscles act when they're stabilizer muscles. And you think, okay, if what grows muscles and makes them a lot stronger is really heavy action, real hard contraction, the equivalent of a huge rocket booster, when we use our muscles that have the power to be huge rocket boosters as just little bursts of thrust to keep ourselves from falling and killing ourselves in an unstable squat, is that hypertrophically stimulative to those muscles, to those stabilizers? No, it's not. It's way sub-threshold. So when people say, well, it's good to be unstable because it involves your stabilizers, yes, it involves them, but not in a high enough requisite force production to actually hypertrophy them or make them stronger. So it's kind of like you're learning how to stay ultra stable, but you got nothing to show for it because you're no more jacked, right? That's not that great. Now, in beginners, they can get some stability muscles to get hypertrophied because everything hypertrophies in your beginner, but especially when you're intermediate and advanced, people are like, well, you should do this on cables instead of a machine because you have to stabilize yourself and it works your stabilizers. It's just tiring them out for no reason. But it gets worse than that. If you are so unstable that you're not able to generate max force, you are trading off the non-stimulation of the stabilizers because they're just active, they're not stimulated. You're trading that off to much less stimulation of the dynamic of the actual prime movers. So if your bicep curl looks like this, yeah, sure, all these muscles around here tend to, be active a little bit, give you nothing. But your biceps, because they're super unstable, can't actually recruit more of their faster twitch fibers unless your growth is limited. So unstable training is not a good idea. Now, here's another benefit of unstable training. It teaches you to generate force when unstable. If you have practice generating force when unstable, like your unstable, let's say balance board squat starts out at a max of 100 pounds. After a few weeks of training it, given no underlying increase in the size or strength of your quads, just as a technique, you can get up to 120 or 130 pounds for a max squat because you're better adapted to exerting yourself in unstable situations. And people say it's a good thing, but my retort is this. Why? Are you learning to train in an earthquake? No. So what the hell are you doing? And the technical term for unstable training in this regard is unstable surface training. It is the surface, the Bosu ball or the balance board, that is unstable. So the specificity of your adaptation is to train for an unstable surface. And you ask another question, say, well, this is like good for athletes and stuff, right? Well, so first of all, they actually engage almost entirely on stable surfaces. Okay? Football field, soccer pitch, basketball court, they're not wobbling. They're quite fucking stable. Now, the whole system is wobbling because the athlete's moving a lot. We say, well, shouldn't we train them unstable in the gym so that they get good at it in the actual field of play? Well, actually, the gym, the purpose is to train strength, size, and power as stable as possible. Stable is optimal in order to get those trained the best. Barbells, machines, dumbbells, etc. When we step onto the field of play and actually practice the sport, that's when we take our power and strength and hypertrophy that's designed in its ultimately stable environment and transfer it into a less stable environment. That practice is how we learn to exert ourselves unstable. So if you want a jiu-jitsu competitor to get really good at exerting themselves in the less stable environment of jiu-jitsu, you train them in a stable environment, regular weight room, nothing fancy, and then you also have them practice doing the sport of jiu-jitsu, and they learn to take their strength and size in that practice and turn it into something that works unstable. Notice, gym, hardcore shit, actual field of play / mat, hardcore shit. Where the fuck is the Bosu ball? Nowhere. It doesn't belong anywhere in that because it's fucking pointless. It's taking a zero skill, no jiu-jitsu involved in squatting on a Bosu ball. And also it obviates all the benefits of a squat, like making you jacked and strong. And it just teaches you the skill of squatting on a Bosu ball, which is a neat skill if you're a SEAL, a performing SEAL at SeaWorld. I don't even know if that's ethical anymore. Do they still have performing animals, Scott, the video guy?
Yeah, but they're under fire.
Under fire, really?
Yeah.
I saw a video once, completely unrelated to SeaWorld or mammals, called Performing Animals number 5, volume 5. All right, here's the worst part. Let's say you're trying to simultaneously be unstable in your training and produce high degrees of force. Well, that would be great. The problem is your body and brain are designed to counter that. Your body has evolved to do a few really cool things. For example, if you put your foot, if you're climbing trees and you put it onto a tree branch, your body doesn't know if that tree branch is stable yet. You will notice it is almost impossible to convince yourself to put all your weight down on that foot, even if someone tells you the branch is super stable, because your body doesn't believe you. It is designed to cap maximum force production to test out like a cat. You got to test it out. If your body feels that the tree limb is unstable, it won't allow you to actually put your weight down. It's the scariest thing in the world. It's like a huge feedback mechanism. You're like, I can't do it. So I'm going to just step out. You're like, nope, it's unstable. Fuck that. Fuck you. Fuck all of you. Climb back down the tree. Y'all ain't my friends anymore. Get in your car and drive away. That was the last time I had friends. But in any case, it's not a really possible thing because your body auto-caps force production if it detects instability. Don't try this. Think about it in your head. Don't actually try this. A sheet of very, very slick ice. You stand on it, try to jump as high as you can. Your body won't let you have quads and glutes engaged at a very high force level because it's like, fuck you, we're unstable, we're going to die trying to do this. Hell no, it just won't do it. So if you put people onto a Bosu ball or onto unstable boards and you actually have them squat, which is direct research I was involved with as a master's student at Appalachian State a decade back. And what we found was people's max squats tested all the way. They warmed up and everything. Maximum squats on an unstable surface and two little like Bosu ball thingies. They were as an average of 60% as much as their actual max squats on a stable surface. But hold on a sec. Some of your physiology is coming back. Faster twitch fibers aren't even recruited until you get into the 70s in most cases. The biggest fast twitch fibers start getting recruited in the 70% 1RM range and above. 60% is almost a guarantee that you're not recruiting your biggest, gnarliest muscle fibers, and it's the best possible way to cap strength production, strength improvement, and hypertrophy improvement just by design, right? So the recruitment of faster fibers is minimal at even if it feels like you're trying. So when you do a 1RM attempt on Bosu balls, it feels quote unquote heavy. It doesn't feel like it's pushing a lot through your spine, but you feel like, holy shit, I can barely move this. That's because you're unstable. The challenge is a bad challenge. It's not helping you out. A non-directed adaptation challenge isn't good. Challenge isn't the point. specific challenge to get you good at the thing is the point, right? Imagine if you were trying to learn Spanish as fast as possible because in a week you had a trip to Spain where you had to negotiate with some people. What would make it harder for you to learn Spanish is if the Spanish was presented at an accelerated pace, if the word use quickly expanded to more advanced. That makes it harder, but in a way that makes you better at Spanish. However, somebody could say, it would really make Spanish learning harder. And you're like, what? Like you learn normal Spanish, get on your fucking, Scott, what's that language app called? Fuck swipe?
Babel.
Babel? The fuck are you talking about?
Did you say language?
Yeah. Rosetta Stone. Right?
Babel's one too.
Okay, fine, but Rosetta Stone's good. Can you just can I have my win? So anyway, you got your language app and someone's like, hey, while you learn Spanish, what would really make it challenging is you also get kicked in the nuts every 5 minutes. You're like, what? That would make it harder. Yes. Would it make you better at Spanish? No, other than saying ay Dios mío a whole lot when you get kicked in the nuts. So balance training is definitely hard. Unstable training is hard, but it's not hard in a way that makes you more jacked or strong or athletic. It just makes you marginally better at doing balance training, which if that's a priority to you, I got a circus I run, and maybe you can join our circus. We got bearded man. That's not very exotic. Elephant woman. Yeah, see, that's better. All right, so final recommendations on unstable training. If you want the best size and strength, you got to be stable. Machines, Smith machines, barbells, body weight. Cables and dumbbells are great, but I would recommend using them mostly in the 10 to 30 rep range, not in the 5 to 10 rep range. If you want to do unstable training, think about why you want to do it and what you're going to get out of it, and if the rest of this presentation hasn't disproven that. If you want to just do it because you love it, or if you want the skill of being able to squat standing on 2 separate basketballs, fine, but reconsider because it's not the best way to get bigger, stronger, or better at sports. That's my shit. Folks, last thing I want to tell you is this. Like, subscribe, click, comment. See you next time.